Hello, my name is Connor Gilbert, and I'm the Digital Marketing Manager at the University of Olivet. Welcome to this podcast produced by UO. This show is designed to complement the Winter 2025 Shipherd's Record magazine and President's Annual Report. Today, I have the awesome opportunity of introducing my former colleague, Lori Otto. Lori was formerly the Director of Alumni Engagement. Lori, along with a panel of UO stakeholders, will be interviewing today Betsy Dole. Betsy Dole is a former Board of Trustees member and is currently a Board of Trustees Emeritus. The panel will be comprised of C. Noyes. She is the Chair of Social Sciences and Professor of Sociology and Anthropology at the University of Olivet. She's also the former Director of the Betsy Dole Women's Research Center. In addition, Robin Hinman, Assistant Vice President for Advancement at the University of Olivet, will also be on the panel. Lastly, the panel is comprised of three current University of Olivet students, including senior Will Hukenbecker, junior Savannah Schmidt, and sophomore Callie Sutherland. And with that being said, I'll let Lori take it away.
So if we want to jump right in, Betsy, if you could tell us a little bit about how your connection with Olivet started.
Well, I think my main connection with Olivet is because of the church. I've long been a member of the United Church of Christ, and prior to that, the Congregational Church. And it was Congregationalists who came from Oberlin, Ohio, to found Olivet College in 1844, I believe. That's really the main connection. A minor connection is that I'm a firm believer in private liberal arts colleges. I'm a graduate of Oberlin College in Ohio myself. My husband, a graduate of Bowdoin College, a small college in Maine. And it's mainly the connection with the United Church of Christ that keeps me interested in Olivet, among other institutions which Congregationalists founded.
And I know that you talk in your book about why women and gender issues are important to you, but could you reflect a little bit on that for us here?
Well, if we assume that we live in a patriarchal society, which we do, and even more so when I was growing up, I didn't know women who were judges. I certainly didn't know women who were Black judges. Our society has changed so much now that the two women who are on this panel today may not have any understanding of what it was like to grow up as a woman when you couldn't own property, you couldn't have your own credit card. In order to travel and rent a car, I had to prove that, because I was not employed, I had to prove somehow or other that I could pay for the car, even though I had money and I could pay for the car. So we've come a long ways in giving women equal privileges to men, but there's still a sense in which a woman's opinion is not valued to the extent that a man's opinion is. I would refer back to the Senate confirmation hearings of Justice Kavanaugh. I think it was the women who were interviewing Christine Blasey Ford. Was that her name?
Yep.
It was quite remarkable that this woman came forward in national public view, being televised, and confessed. She didn't have to confess. She told the story of what she perceived to be a physical sexual attack on her as a college student. Yes, probably they were all drunk, but nevertheless, it was brave of her to do that. But the Senate preferred to vote in favor of the man. And I have to believe that they didn't take her seriously. I hope that these days men will take women seriously, but even that is being questioned. So I won't go on, but I think you get a taste of my feminism.
And I believe part of that passion is what helped us or helped you establish what was called the Women's Resource Center here on campus. So could you tell us a little bit about how that came to be?
Well, actually, I didn't establish it. I really had nothing to do with it. The then president of the college, knowing that I was an advocate for women, every year when I've been sitting on going to Board of Trustees meetings, I would always ask, what's the percentage of women students at Olivet? And what's the percentage of men students? And why aren't there more women at Olivet? And is it because women aren't being treated equally at Olivet? I think those are still questions that need to be asked. And I would hope that women students are asking them, because it's my understanding it's still not a 50-50 split between men and women. But nevertheless, the president established it and named it in my honor. And I was really very pleased and hopeful that it would be very supportive of women and their issues at the college.
And C, you want to tell us a little bit about your involvement with the center?
I've been involved with the center actually since it was started. I was on the original board that sort of got it all set up and running and so forth. And basically then we hired directors who came in. I cooperated with the center to Julie, gosh, I can't remember Julie's last name.
Kilmer.
Thank you. Julie Kilmer was hired as the first director. So as I, at the time I wasn't chair, but as the representative of the So Shanth program, I coordinated with Julie to bring along a women in gender studies minor that was associated with what was going on in the center, as well as being an academic minor. And I taught in the minor and continued to, try and get it some traction, get folks taking courses. And then was appointed director. I don't remember the year. I should have looked at my CV before I came here. But I was then the director for several years until becoming chair and being director did not work out well. It was just too much time for both. And so I moved out from that. And most recently, the center moved out of the more academic sphere and more into the student life sphere. So, but yeah, I've been involved with it basically since the inception.
Yeah, and I think from the beginning, my hope was that it would, of course, coordinate with the academic courses that touched on feminism and women's issues and gender issues, because from the beginning I was also supportive of the Gay-Straight Alliance, which was called Common Ground. I don't know if it still exists as Common Ground or not, but we could talk about that later if we wish to. But it was my hope that the Women's Resource Center would be a place where women could get together and support each other, not only receive support from the staff, ask questions, but it would be a resource for them and a place where they might advocate on campus and otherwise for women's issues. And we still today need women advocating for women's issues, friends.
Well, and if I can just jump in on top of that, yeah, I mean, that's how we saw it as well, is I thought it was very important to have the center and So Shanth and Women in Gender Study coordinate. And so we've the center's done a lot of work working with the Women's Network for ACE, done a lot of stuff on uh, around women's voting, around um, equal pay. We have had off and on, depends on student interests, students involved in the NOW organization. I remember a couple of years ago, actually, one of our students was one of the VIP guests when Gloria Steinem spoke over at Kalamazoo, which was kind of a cool day for everybody. So yeah, so to that extent, we've really tried because Betsy was very clear that that's what she would like to see. And so the center was available. It's one of the areas that's noted on our Title IX materials. And of course, the center is set up to talk to folks who are having problems and issues. As time has gone on since, the 90s, we also began to get involved, and I think pretty much the Gay Straight Alliance, and I'm sorry, what the name is now is Allies and Queers.
Queers and Allies, which
Yes,
is the group
Queers and
that
Allies.
us three students are members of.
Yeah, I know, and I'm so sorry, but I'm kind of like Betsy. It started off as Common Ground, so we both have these numerous iterations of what the group was called. It's the same group.
Good.
So those gender issues began pretty much nationally in higher education to get involved with issues of women's rights as well. So, but yeah, there's still a lot of cooperation between us and the center in terms of things that we do. So.
And then we have some students on the call here today that actively participate. So maybe if you guys would like to speak to what the center means to you. And I know we promote it as a safe space for all students. And so maybe we could just kind of speak to some of your experience.
Yes, I'm especially interested in hearing from the students. We've just heard from Will, so what about the other two students? Do you use the Women's Center, Women's and Gender Center, and how do you use it? Is it known on campus?
So for the center, we have flyers up, and I know it's on the app, so it is being promoted throughout campus. Even in the library, if you enter, the TV's on and it'll scroll by on the screen. I use it when I go to every meeting, and I know that there were some times last year when it was a little more open with Joshua Van Wy running it that I would pop by to say hi. Um, it's always been just a fun space to hang out with people, well, like-minded people, and relax. Uh, I've always found it. I found a nice community here, and I'm thoroughly enjoying myself.
Callie, do I recall that you said you were a sophomore?
Yes.
Okay, so would you say it is a place that's helpful to entering and freshmen, sophomores to get acquainted and feel that they belong? Does it help you feel that you belong someplace at Olivet?
Absolutely. I feel like I've made many friends through the center, and I probably wouldn't have made as many without it.
Good, that's exactly what I'd like to hear.
That's fantastic. Savannah, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, like kind of about the same as Callie was saying, where like it was just a nice place to go when I didn't want to like be in my dorm all day, and like I would always go there. I remember I have a lot of good memories of going there with my friends, and we'd watch movies there, like do our homework together, like even play some video games sometimes, or just talk to each other. Like I really hold those memories in high regards. I mean, it's harder this year since I've gotten busier to really do those same things with friends, and especially since a lot of them have graduated or transferred out. So it's nice. Like, I'm happy with what it is.
Yes, yes. And it might be interesting for the women in the Women's Resource Center to use that for a discussion sometime. Is this, do we feel this, it's still this way? Or can I feel passionate about something and have people not think, oh man, is she pushy? I don't want to be around her.
And
And
you
but
talk about a lot of those times in your book about finding your voice and speaking out. And I think it was just very empowering to read about that, you stood your ground and you spoke your piece, and it didn't matter the situation, because you felt that it was important, that what you had to say was important. And so I really appreciated that message in your book. You spoke about your time on the board here. Would you like to kind of share with us about how that came to be?
yes, I think I do describe it in the book quite thoroughly, but when I went on the board, and by the way, the president of the college had called my husband and talked with him, and he said they had an opening on the board and he would like either one of us to serve on the board. And my husband said, well, he was already, he was working full time and he was on a couple of nonprofit boards here in Grand Rapids where we live. So why don't you take Betsy? So they got Betsy. Little did the college know what they were getting in for, I say with a smile on my face. But then I became vice chair of the board. And the first time that the board chair left, you might think that the vice chair would be moving into that position, but I wasn't. The board nominating committee chose another man. And then it happened, we had the blow up, the famous supposed race riot in 1992, which wasn't a race riot at all. It was just an incident with a mixture of sex, alcohol, and race. And over emotional students on a Saturday night and a slow news weekend when the news media got hold of it and they thought what a terrible thing had happened at Olivet, the first college to admit students of color and females, to have this happen, as if just having done that in 1850 or whenever it was, everything should be perfect. Well, things aren't perfect. We try, and we all try to be, as white people, we try to recognize our privilege and we try to avoid racist comments and behavior, but we fail. We all fail. So at any rate, came time for the board to appoint a new chair of the board, and I got a phone call that it was September. I received a phone call from the nominating committee to nominate officers of the board. They had asked 8 men if they would serve as chair of the board, and every single one of the 8 men refused. So they came to me because they thought I was, quote, a peacemaker, unquote. So I was not very happy in the way that happened, but I knew it was a job that needed to be done and I knew I could do it. So I said yes. So that's how I came to be chair of the board. One of the things I first did was to find an interim president because our president had been forcibly forced to resign. So we needed an interim president for a year. And I found that person who carried us through that year. And I organized a search committee who did a good job. I don't remember if you were on that search committee or not.
No, that was the one that hired Basses, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, that predates me by a couple of years.
Yeah. And that committee did a good job because we needed someone to kind of turn the college around at that point. And that's what President Michael Bassis was able to accomplish. So I feel pleased about that. But I would keep on asking the question, how many women students are there at Olivet? Are there an equal number to men? Most liberal arts colleges have an equal number of men and women, if not more women than men. So I'm going to ask the students, all three of you, what do you think, a couple of questions. What is the biggest need at Olivet right now? And it could be in the social realm, it could be in the academic realm, it could be in terms of residence halls, or what do you see as the biggest need? And what, when you tell your friends and your grandparents and your high school friends from your high school days about Olivet, what do you brag about? So what's the biggest need and what do you brag about Olivet? I'd like to hear from each of you.
Go ahead, Will.
All right, I can start. I think the biggest need in Olivet would be the increase in diversity and inclusivity measures. I think we're making great strides, especially in recent years, through the Gender Center and through different other groups that are on campus for inclusivity. I know that there is an inclusivity and diversity board on campus that has been reaching out to the Gender Center in the last week or so. And so I think that making sure that that is being promoted more on campus is a necessity that needs to take a higher place in the priorities of the campus because, as I said, while we're making strides towards reaching a good point of inclusivity, I think there's always more that can be done regardless of what efforts have been made. And to answer your second question of the things that I brag about for Olivet is the small campus community and the ability to step outside of your comfort zone without feeling overwhelmed by the amount of people who are either the same or different than yourself. And so that level of diversity is absolutely present. And to go back to that need of while that diversity is very present, there still needs to be an increase in the campus-wide mindset of how to interact with diverse peoples.
Thank you.
Savannah, do you have something to add?
I guess the one thing that I think kind of needs to change is like employee tenure because like I've been here 3 years and I think the number of like professors I've had that are no longer here is higher than the ones that have stayed. And like we have a lot of like professors that like have genuinely wanted to make changes but haven't been around long enough for anything to change. It just sucks because I get like there's a lot of professors I had that I really liked, but now they're off somewhere going somewhere else or they just decided to like quit or like it's just hard. And it just kind of makes me not want to like get close to the professors, which is something I really like about Olivet is that like with a small campus you can like build bonds with your professors and like get to know them. And I really enjoyed that. It's just kind of sad that they don't stick around for very long.
What do you brag about?
Well, like I said, like being able to like know my professors on like that first name basis and like being able to like get to know people well. Like it's when I'm just going out and walking like to the KC for dinner, like I can see people I know on my walk or at least people I recognize. Like it's nice being able to like know people better and not like be surrounded by strangers every day. I like the community aspect of it.
Yeah, good, thank you.
Callie, you want to jump in?
Well, uh, besides what Will and Savannah said, I would think that something that would need to be worked on is the amount of involvement with students and events going around campus. Because you can have many different societies and different club put out posters and send out all sorts of promotional things and only have anywhere from 20 to 40 students to a thing. And sometimes, depending on what it is, you would really want a lot more people to show up, and it'd be a lot more fun, and you'd make a lot more connections with your fellow students. So I would just wish that there was a bit more of the student to student connection around campus. Um, Something I brag about back home, I definitely brag about my professors. Um, One of my biggest brags is that I get taught by the mayor of the town, and I always find that neat that I can do that. Um, and so with the professor thing, I think that's mainly a department. It depends on departments because in like the English and writing department, we have had some teachers for years and years. Um, while I haven't heard much about the turnover for them as with others.
Great, thank you. Betsy, do you have additional questions for them?
No, but I just a comment in general. What you have on a college campus is it's a community of people who really come together, and they don't have a common background. They come from different high schools and different towns, and families are all different in some way or other. And then you have outstanding visible differences such as race, and perhaps nationality. We haven't even touched on international students. I assume there are some at all of that. But you have this diversity in your community, and I think what Will brought up is really important, especially these days, when it seems as if it's becoming more difficult for people to reach out and truly try to understand someone who comes from a different, I'm just going to use the term life perspective. See, you could disagree with me on my terminology as a former sociologist, but I come at it as well, it used to be called WASP. Students, do you know what a WASP is? I don't hear an answer.
I don't think I've heard of it before. I'm sorry.
It doesn't
Okay,
get used
no, you
much.
don't need to be sorry.
It doesn't
That's
get used
good.
much anymore.
White Anglo-Saxon Protestant. And there was a period when people from our group kind of led the country, and we were the prominent ones. Well, part of what we're going through right now is the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. And some of those Protestants are the far right evangelicals and now members of what we call Christian nationalism, which we could talk about at another podcast, and I hope maybe you do tackle that one. But if people are having to give that up and value. Personally, I've always valued getting to know people who come from a different background, totally different background than mine. So that happens on campus, but not everyone in your community, whether it's your campus or there in Olivet, or whether it's the city of Grand Rapids, or whether it's the retirement community of about 200 people where I live, not all of us are ready to really ask tough questions. Who are you? What do you come from? What do you believe? Who'd you vote for? Why'd you vote for that person? We can't even today ask those questions. And I think one of the great things that society has to do is learn how to ask those questions, how to receive those questions, and not feel that you're being jumped on or put in a category or criticize, but then being willing to listen to what the other person says with respect to their answer. And that's what you're experiencing during your college, your university years. And I just commend you for being open to that, because doors will open for you when you're ready to look behind the little room that you live in. And I would just add that one of the reasons I wrote my memoir was that I wanted to encourage women of all ages to not be afraid to have an opinion and not be afraid to speak out, not be afraid to have a discussion with someone who perhaps doesn't think about things the same way that you do. Because I've always said, if someone disagrees with me on something, that's an opportunity for me to grow, for me to learn someone else's opinion. And out of that, there's growth for me and there's growth for the other people too. I like to think that at the age of 93, I'm still growing.
On behalf of the University of Olivet, I want to thank Betsy Dole for taking the time to speak with us today. This will conclude this episode. Be sure to read and listen to all the other articles and podcasts in this great issue of Shipherd's Record. Have a great day.